Hello, everyone. We are back again, back in the podcasting hot seats for you to review the week as we have been doing generally. But obviously, I had the temerity to go on holiday, although in my defence, it was the first holiday I've had for 10 years. But
well, Peter, hello. Let me just get in there immediately before we get into it. How was your holiday? I was really meaning to ask you about that.
No, it was very good. Thank you very much. We went to France, mainly in Paris, and we did a few days at Disneyland. And I remember saying to people, "Oh yeah, I'm going to get some Disney ears and stuff like that." But then when I got there, I thought, "Do you know what? The problem is Disney ears look okay in Disneyland, but not in normal life." So therefore, I thought I'd buy myself something which I was reasonably practical, that I could see myself wearing, on a day-to-day basis. And this is it. This hat, which is actually a Captain America hat. And my eldest was so incredibly embarrassed by okay. Anyway, so I thought it was very practical. Actually, I'm trying to switch the thing off now. But I thought it was a very very practical purchase. But my kids were very embarrassed when I wore it. Although I would say,
I can imagine.
yeah. So I was encouraged not to wear it. But anyway,
I'm sorry, I didn't quite see that. Could you put it on again?
I will leave it. I've switched it off now. It'll take me ages to switch back on again. And it also doesn't fit very well over this.
And also, you can't afford it anyway because I think energy prices are going up.
Exactly. Although I have to say that it will help me at night looking for things. I won't have to switch the lights on because it is powered by its own miniature battery. So actually, I'll be saving electricity.
I'm very pleased you have that.
Thank you. And how have you been since we've been away?
Perfect. I didn't actually have to come on this show, which was brilliant. It was beautifully calm.
Of course.
No, I was good. Nothing to report. All
good.
How's the leg? All good. Did I mention that I had an operation on it?
Yeah, you might have done. Yeah. Now, how's that going?
It's fine. It's getting better every day a little bit, and finally I will run out of self-pity to share with you.
All right. Brilliant. Cool. So we've now done with the positive part of the podcast. So now we'll go on for as I have described on other calls. Delivering you the weekly bad news digest of bad news with a smile. So this week we are going to be talking about energy. We're going to be talking about a few sort of tricky trends that are happening at the moment in the corporate world, and then also having a chat about the what could happen next with the next Prime Minister. So there we go, or list of interesting and uplifting subjects, as always, at the moment. But anyway, what do you think? So, I mean, energy prices, loads of chat during this week about energy prices. I suppose it's intensified because we've left August now, we're into September, and suddenly it's all looking at, we're on the verge of autumn/winter, plus, of course, for retailers, there's Christmas in prospect as well. So anyway, what do you make of all the chat on energy prices then?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think, unfortunately, sadly, we have to report that we were right when we were discussing that several months ago about what Putin might actually do as we are heading into autumn and then winter. I'm not saying we were the only one who was right. I mean, that was pretty visible. Of course, I'm going to claim that you heard it here first and nowhere else.
And then everyone followed us.
Yes,
right?
then everybody followed us. Yes, exactly. That's undoubtedly the case. Moving on. No, but joking aside, so basically what we chatted about at the time was that Putin might well cut gas off Europe entirely
Mm-hmm.
in order
Mm-hmm.
to put more pressure on European governments and dilute the concerted front, which of course is the reason that the Ukraine is getting more and more
Yeah.
war material in supply into theater, etc. And this clearly is now happening. It's been starting to happen when he put the Nord Stream 1 oil pipeline in a so-called maintenance mode, and now,
Mm-hmm.
lo and behold, a fault has been found and the pipeline is not going to come on again. That
Mm-hmm.
is probably not going to surprise many people, but just because it's not a surprise doesn't mean that it's not going to be massively bad.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, for obvious reasons, I don't have to elaborate. And so uh, he's trying to put political pressure on parties and European governments. Whether that will happen or not is a political discussion. We're not having that at the moment, but of course it will further exacerbate energy prices, which have been spiraling up even without that particular political initiative.
Mm.
And that's nothing new, and we've discussed this before. What I would like to focus on, or point out at least, was some unusual news, because what I did see is that energy prices have actually come down
Mm.
off their peak, and that's not
Mm-hmm.
just gas prices, but also oil prices.
Mm.
And I'd like to sort of, I mean, there are two things here to point out. The first one is the obvious, sort of maybe more negative one, or even realistic one. We can say, yes, they have fallen off the peak by about 20%, but they're still about 12 times as high as they used to be
Mm.
before the war started, the invasion
You almost
started.
said pandemic then, didn't
I
you?
did want to say pandemic, but that's not the case.
I know. We're not in 2020 anymore, mate. It's 2022 now.
Yeah,
This is the new big word.
being
Anyway, sorry.
dragged screaming into
I
2022.
know. Living in the past. But anyway, no.
Oh,
Go
I
on.
would love to.
Carry on.
I would love to at
Yeah.
the moment. Yeah,
Yeah.
never said that before. Anyway,
Yeah.
so we have prices come down, gas prices 20% off their peak, 12 times still the level they were in pre-war times. But I would like to focus on the fact, A, that they came down, and second, why they came down,
Mm.
because that's interesting. It's partially to do with Norway expanding gas production of their resources, and also
Mm-hmm.
partially to do with the UK finding
Mm.
new oil fields to tap
Mm-hmm.
into. This news is reasonably old. I think it came out in March. We
Mm.
found a very extensive field of gas underneath the North Sea of
Mm-hmm.
the East Anglia coast, I think,
Mm-hmm.
and this is now starting to be commercially exploited.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another oil field which we used to exploit, which we now have the green light from regulators and politicians to exploit again, to redevelop. And so
Mm-hmm.
there is untapped resources in, well, certainly gas in Europe, which previously were commercially not viable to exploit, but now have begun to be commercially viable.
Mm.
So the point I'm making is rather subtle. It's not saying that this is therefore going to be all right and gas prices are going to fall back to the level they were before the invasion of the Ukraine anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what we can say with some level of reasonable expectation is that gas prices are not necessarily going to go up year after year from current peaks. When I say
Mm.
year after year, of course, nobody would have expected that to happen for the next 10 years. But, when you watch the news, you could think, well, for the next several years, 2 or 3 years, this might happen. Looking at this potential natural gas resource, which European countries are beginning to exploit and have at their disposal, I'm reasonably optimistic that we're going to see peak prices in gas in Europe at around this time, after we've seen the impact of the Russian cutoff.
Mm. I mean, I think that it's just it's just a catalogue of disaster, isn't it? Really, unfortunately. I mean, there's no. I mean, I feel like having maybe there should be something done in the Game of Thrones style. Winter is coming, and they should have that plastered everywhere, because Yeah, I mean, I did think it was interesting, by the way, the other day. I'm pretty sure I saw it somewhere in a newspaper about how Germany was saying that, oh, we're all right now. We've got our tanks, and now we've got enough. And I'm pretty sure about a month ago it didn't sound like that. But I mean, who knows? Who knows? But the proof is going to be in the pudding. I mean, who knows? I mean, there's an outside chance, isn't there, that global warming will kick in. I mean, this is a terrible thing to say, but global warming might kick in. And in fact, wouldn't it be interesting if the autumn winter was a warm one, was an uncharacteristically warm one, which could help I mean, we're clearly.
You're a cheerful man.
I mean, I know. I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? Really. I mean, we had a ridiculously hot summer, and it's not just been us; it's been across Europe, and it's been across China as well. I mean, Yangtze River drying out, drying up, Rhine drying up, all those kinds of things. So, I mean, it's not absolutely outrageous to wonder whether we are going to have a warmer winter, but probably we won't. But who knows? I mean, if it did happen, it'd be quite interesting to see whether that would lessen the effect that we're expecting to feel.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's a sign of the times that we have to clutch at straws of that catastrophic nature, really.
Yeah.
Maybe gas prices are not going to be as bad as they are because our houses are going to burn down in a wildfire in winter. Hey. So I'd rather choose that for that not to happen. And of course, also, unfortunately, the impact of global warming is not just that the climate gets warmer. It's also we get more intense winter storms leading to flooding and other things. So I'd rather not have that. But as we said before, unfortunately these things are linked, and it is the way in which European countries need to respond to the crisis in oil and gas, unfortunately, also means that we have to, at least temporarily, bring old coal plants back online, which is going to be clearly detrimental to reaching the temperature goal for global warming. And also, it's again the war in the Ukraine. What Russia is doing, been doing already, and is now doing even more, is cut off gas supply to Europe, which means they are having excess gas that they burn. And as they burn it, tons and tons of CO2 gas are being released into the atmosphere. So even without us putting old coal plants back online, this is already going to be a setback to global warming. But that's the next crisis. Or maybe it's not the next crisis. I've seen the wildfires almost from my window. This is not exactly true, but I've seen the plumes. And this is happening, wildfires in Surrey. I don't think anybody can say global warming is not happening. We're seeing the impact of it, which perhaps there's a line of hope there. It is now so obvious that this is happening that political will has to be there in order to put more investments into alternative energies. And I think that's definitely going to be a theme over the next 10 years. But for now, talking about gas prices, like I said, it's not good news, but I think we're going to see the peak in gas prices perhaps leveling out when we get through this winter.
Let's hope they level out and don't go up. That's the main thing, isn't it, really? But I mean, in the meantime, I mean, there's lots of really surprising and yet not surprising at the same time stories. I mean, these stories about this metals company in Manchester where all the workers are being asked to wear more clothes. I mean, presumably, if you're working in a steelworks, I think it's steel that they do. You probably should, you won't be wandering around in mankinis. I wouldn't have thought, especially with all those sparks flying around. Could be pretty pretty dangerous, I would have thought. Bit like cooking bacon with with just your underwear on. Not that I've ever done that, by the way. I don't know. It just seems a
I
sort
was
of,
just going to ask. Yeah.
No, no. I just thought I'd cut out any kind of horrendous images there
Well, you
for
haven't
everyone.
cut them out. They are firmly embedded in my head
they're
now.
firmly there, right?
You
Okay.
in a mankini prancing about in the kitchen, singing the bacon song.
Lunges to the kitchen. Anyway, no, sorry. Let's stop there. But I mean, they've been asked to wear jumpers, work at night, and which you think, my God, what's going on there? But then but then you see what the difference to their electricity bill is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And there was something on in the on the internet somewhere about Tom Kerridge, the famous chef, who's saying one of his electricity bill is going up 3 times or 4 times, and even someone like him, who you think is very successful and should be doing okay, is going to have an absolute nightmare. So yeah, I mean it's just some extreme measures are being at least thought about now, and they're going to have to be implemented because of the rise in price of energy.
Yes, and I think energy rationing is going to come this winter, and the incident which you just talked about is sort of a form of energy rationing, self-imposed, isn't it? Because I remember this story. I think this particular steelworks has like a £250,000 electricity bill normally, and this went up to £750,000. So if you think, I mean, I don't really know what the margins are on this type of business, but you can think margins are probably not going to be that high. I mean, 5%, 10% maybe, if that would be actually quite a good margin. So you can sort of think what that does to your margin if one of your expense items, which is probably one of the biggest ones, all of a sudden goes up by £500,000. That's a lot, and you can see this company is scraping at the bottom of the barrel in terms of how to respond to this. Asking all the workers to come in with a second jumper on may sound ludicrous, but I don't think this is going to be an isolated case. As we go into winter, that's going to be what people will have to do. We talked about it in one of our podcasts for people like you and me, the retail sector, if you like, so to speak. I will certainly sit in my office here at home in winter with thermal underwear on and gloves with the fingers cut off.
Yes,
and
exactly.
It sounds like I'm being flippant here. I'm not actually. I really am thinking about doing this rather than incurring a super high energy bill. I'm going to do that.
Absolutely. No. So yes, I mean, I do think that is clearly, we're standing on the precipice here, and actually that I guess that brings us on to the next point, which is about sort of corporate trends here. So I mean, I mentioned Tom Kerridge there, but pubs, restaurants, etc. They have just come through a horrendous nightmare of COVID, and they're just coming out of it, and now they've got to deal with this. I mean, I said to you earlier, isn't it? It's a bit like going to hospital for open heart surgery.
Having a knee operation.
Happening a knee operation, exactly. And then walking out on your crutches.
Yes.
Blinking into the sunlight, and then someone mugs you and starts kicking you in the
knee.
In the knee. Yeah. I mean, it's just like, well, it's not going to end well, is it really? So, I think that it would be fair to say that the high streets that have been decimated have just started coming back into it. Then they have this. This could be the thing to end them all. So yeah, I mean, I think that this is clearly a very, very tricky time, particularly for the hospitality and the retail sector.
Yeah. Well, indeed. I mean, that was one trend which we saw reported last week and in the weeks before, is that the pub industry in particular is getting very concerned about the rising electricity bills. But of course, you can extend this to the hospitality sector in general. I'm sure people would want to be in a pub because that's a heated space, so you don't have to heat your home while you're in the pub. And also, if you drink enough alcohol, then maybe you won't actually notice anymore so much your home isn't heated.
So hold on. So what you're saying is, buy pub stocks, buy
no, because of what I'm going to say next.
Oh, right, okay.
No, I don't. That was an unkind comment. Of course, that's not what. Let me be serious for a moment. So basically, that might actually well happen, but pub landlords are justifiably concerned about the increase in lecky bills, electricity bills, etc. Now, there is one other trend which has actually shocked me a little bit, because I must admit I had not foreseen this, which is that electricity companies now apparently are starting to ask customers, to put up several months worth of electricity bill as a deposit, because electricity companies are starting to get worried that their customers are going to default on their payments. And surely this is also going to be exacerbated, this particular concern on the part of the lecky companies, by this movement. What is it called? Don't pay your bill, or whatever it is.
Don't pay. Yeah,
that's it. Don't pay. And now that is a concern even more than the actual electricity bill, because it goes right to cash flow. So let me just say that for a moment. I had to I had to sort of learn this. I have to admit, I mean, it was a business school and everything, and I looked at everything, P&L and balance sheet. The cash flow statement I sort of ignored a little bit, because my sector, insurance, didn't really matter so much. As an insurance company, you can always find the cash. But if you are any company which isn't insurance, a manufacturing company, retail company, a pub landlord, then you will have to watch your cash flow hawkishly, because once you are below zero on the cash flow, that is basically when you default, when you go bankrupt. When, let us just say, the pub landlord has a mortgage or a business loan, and the business loan is payable half yearly, and you come up to the 1st of June when the loan payment has to go out, and just at that time, now electricity companies are asking you to put up 2 months worth of inflated electricity bills in cash. You don't have the cash flow, and as a consequence, you might default on your loan and go out of business that way. So it is not just the relatively simple dynamic which we all sort of think about when we hear this. Electricity bills are going up, important expense item in your P&L goes up, you make less profits. How long can you sustain that? It is actually far worse. It's becoming a cash flow issue, and you cannot sustain a zero or below zero cash flow for longer than maybe half a year. Depends on how cash generative your business is, but by definition, it has just stopped being cash generative. So this is a concern, and if that is going to take hold, then I think the issue is going to be exacerbated for the industry as a whole. And I must say, just as a personal comment, I think the energy companies are raking it in at the moment anyway. It sounds to me quite a socially responsible thing to do, to ask people on top of all of this to actually put up deposit for your electricity bill. So
Yeah,
it would be behoven on some other party, who might it be? Politicians, perhaps, to maybe regulate against this. But we haven't seen this dynamic develop yet. But I wouldn't be surprised if politicians in European countries, and in particular also in our country, are going to regulate against this type of practice, were it to take hold and become common practice on part of electricity companies.
Yeah, absolutely. It is interesting, yes, because like you say, I think that there's a lot of concentration on profits and things like that, but not so much about cash flow. But obviously, I'm a small business, and you're absolutely right. I mean, the thing is if your cash flow goes to zero, there's nothing you can do. You could be as profitable as you like, but if you have no cash flow, and then the bills come in, and you have to pay the bills, you just got nothing. You know, the cupboard is bare. So yeah, absolutely. So I think that's a very, very serious problem, and something definitely that was worth mentioning.
One interesting adage in accountancy is profit.
Hold on, sorry. Interesting adage in accountancy. Is that a phrase you thought you would ever say in your life?
Well, I am a part qualified actuary, so from my point of view, accountancy is actually exciting. Quite racy.
yeah, of course it is. Of course it is. Yeah.
So anyway, so what they say when you study accountancy is profit is a fiction, cash flow is reality. So there, isn't that
have you heard that? I mean, that just has T-shirt written all over it, doesn't it? I mean,
totally.
So I mean,
it's got this ring to it. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. I mean, that's almost as good as my other favourite phrase from markets is buy the mystery, sell the history. That is a great phrase.
We're going to do one on these things, aren't we?
Yes,
we're going to do an episode on jargon and things.
Yeah.
Buy the mystery, sell the history. Who writes these things? I'm going to have to say.
It's good though. It's good.
It is.
Good. Yeah. Anyway. Sorry. Right. So anyway, bringing it back to depression and dire doom predictions of doom, etc.
Yes, please.
Let's move on to the Prime Minister. So, as in, we don't have one. We do have one, but we're
I think
tomorrow
get a new one. It's going to be announced.
Yeah. So, what do you think? What do you think is coming up? I mean, I would suggest that the in tray for the new incoming is pretty full at the moment. What do you think that this person needs to do in order to try to at least make the best of a very, very bad situation?
Well, I think my answer to that is not going to be original. Oops, yeah. Did I? I think everybody is pretty certain that it's going to be Liz Truss. So let's just think it's she. So she would need to address the cost of living crisis. We've talked about it now for quite some time, and we have illustrated again how severe it's going to be, both for people like you and me, pub landlords, everybody, cash flow issues, all sorts of things, electricity bills sky high because of Putin's situation. So it's coming to a head this autumn and this winter. If Liz is going to come in tomorrow, that is the first thing which she will need to address, because any incoming new prime minister doesn't have yet a track record of doing anything right, and she will need to establish such a track record. And the most intimidating pressing issue is clearly to do something about this. The reason why this is pretty clear, but I'll just try to maybe make one comment. Hopefully this is not going to sound too gloomy, but we've seen during the pandemic years that people were very unhappy indeed about prolonged lockdowns. The first lockdown went down okay, but then when it happened again and yet again, then people were sort of losing their rag a little bit and becoming very impatient and were going out into the street and were demonstrating against, I don't know exactly what, the virus, I don't know, but people were unhappy with this. These demonstrations stayed reasonably peaceful, but we could see that this was already teetering on the brink. When people are going to be faced with existential issues, and these are real existential issues, people are possibly going to go into the street and are demanding justifiably from the government to help them. And if that's not going to happen, then we might see, I don't know, at worst riots, certainly. A winter of discontent is the expression, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so Liz will, of course, understand this, and this is for her clear, therefore, to tackle this issue. Now, what might she do? I mean, again, in general, it's pretty obvious what governments must do, not just Liz, but also the German government, the French government, etc. We need to put together some form of aid package which will work and which will ease the existential issues which everybody is going to face. And to some extent, I think we can't be too concerned about financial sustainability there. It is what it is. We have to take it on the head. And so from that point of view, I wonder whether I'm actually reasonably optimistic that we are going to see something like this from Liz Truss, because, and this is going to sound a little bit paradoxical, because I said this before, I think Liz Truss is a populist. And because she's a populist, she has already and will continue to promise the people of this country to make things better. Now she has to follow through and she has to deliver something. And the populist will always first promise and then hopefully deliver. And I think we're going to see some aid packet from this government, from the incoming government. Unfortunately, I think at the expense of later pain. But on this one, I would have to say there is no good solution to this.
No.
And we're going to see this from Liz Truss. I think as an aside, we've seen this from Germany. Germany is putting together an enormous aid package. And unfortunately, they've announced to the public, well, spot of bother. I mean, you're all going to get this money, but unfortunately, it's not going to materialize before the end of 18 months because we don't get the bureaucracy to work properly. Anyway, it's the right intention, and I believe that all European countries are going to do something of this nature.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's right. I mean, the devil's in the execution. The other thing as well is that what is it? Maybe a general election you've got to keep. She will have to keep in mind with all this going on that there's a general election in whatever it is, 2 years or something. So the clock starts ticking as soon as she sits in the hot seat. And she's going to have to do something spectacular, I think, really. And the only way of doing something spectacular is by splashing the cash. So if she doesn't, I think, like you say, there's risk of real disquiet, as businesses just fall apart, people can't pay bills, all that kind of thing. Potentially civil unrest. I mean, it really is that serious, I think. So if I like you think she has to unveil like a really major kind of bailout package, and if she does anything less than that, it's not going to go well.
Well, that's also what I think. I would hope that the Conservative Party is clear-minded enough and will clear-minded enough to understand this and act sufficiently in their own interest to do something, because otherwise they must know that they're not going to get the next general election done. So, and I would hope that the aid package will accentuate some dynamics of redistribution, by which I mean we just talked about electricity companies. I mean, what on my wish list would be, I mean, first of all, you're not going to allow electricity companies to demand 2 months worth or whatever it might be of deposit. Second, I still think a windfall tax would be socially acceptable, and the energy companies themselves should actually and have actually argued in favor of it.
Yeah, they have.
Some of them. Yeah. This is the problem with Liz Truss, though, because she is, as far as I believe, and I could see from her arguments in the hustings, slightly ideological. She formulates policies that she believes are in line with conservative ideology, and she shies away from them when they are, in her own words, unconservative. Now, a windfall tax is unconservative, and so I wonder whether the government is going to use these dynamics of redistribution in order to fuel or help fund this particular aid package. In particular, if Jacob Rees-Mogg is going to be business secretary, as I believe it is now increasingly mooted to be.
Yeah.
So I don't know what we're going to see in practice. I do hope that we are going to see a meaningful aid package which is means tested. That's an important point, and
Yes.
which will redistribute some of the wealth generated in the country in a socially responsible way. Otherwise, I don't believe that we are going to have a winter. Well, otherwise, I think we're going to have a winter of discontent. Let's put it that way.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I have to say, I do think that this whole thing about means tested, again, is very, very important. And, it seems to me that I don't know, governments have said, but it's too difficult, it costs too much money, it's this, it's that. I just think that's just that's just a massive cop out. You have to, if you're not doing it now, okay, it won't happen overnight, but it has to be done. It has to be done. It can be done if we are, all our datas are, kept at various places, and surely to goodness, I mean, now that we're moving over to less paper, more data in clouds and things like that, that this can be done. It's just a case of whether they want it to be done enough to actually do something about it.
I agree.
And I think that it's something that needs to be done for future generations, because, you need to be able to target stuff. And I think with technology, the communication that is available via technology, you can do that. You can do that. Whereas before, maybe not.
Yeah. Well, as a practical suggestion to you, we all get this 400 quid support, which is not means tested. So perhaps you can give me your 400 quid, then the money will be allocated where it's needed. What do you think?
If I could give it put it back into a system that I knew would work, yeah, I would.
Oh, you just give it to me.
No,
it's going to be all right.
Oh no, I'm not giving it.
Come on. Okay, be like that. Be like that.
Okay. What about, would you give it to me?
No, I need it more.
There we go. Of course not. Are you mad?
The entire point of my suggestion went this way, not that way.
Yeah. No, fair enough. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
But anyway, no. So there we go. So another week of doom and gloom. But I think some very important points there being made. But I mean, obviously, a lot will depend on the new Prime Minister and what this the policies that the new Prime Minister actually brings in. I mean, this is the thing. A lot of people said, what do you think of it? Who's going to win? Blah, blah. And I've said, look, I don't really comment on it because I've got no control over it at all. It's not being voted for generally. It's Conservative Party members. So I don't want to waste my breath on what may happen. And it's been changing on a day-to-day basis anyway. So I think let's get whoever it is comes in. Let's see what policies they come up with. I mean, on a positive note, they can. I think this leadership election has given them quite a good excuse for them to sit back and see what's happening elsewhere, to see what is anything working particularly well in other countries, or are there particular needs that have popped up in the UK that they didn't realise before? So, I mean, all these things, I mean, it's not been great for us as individuals, but it might have served to give whoever it is who's going to become the next leader at least a bit more of an idea of the current circumstances, and maybe so that they, in such a way that they can actually address them in a practical way.
Yeah, I believe that's true. Nothing else to add.
Yeah, fair enough then. Well, look, on that note, thought maybe we should end it there, and just thank you very much indeed. Again, I missed you. And glad to be back in the hot seat once more.
No, it is wonderful. Thanks, Peter, for having me.
No problem at all. Thanks a lot.
Cool.
See ya.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.